Oh, good. So Matthew, Vegas, what are you guarding in Vegas? What does the military have in Vegas that is so important that they need it with armed people?
There's from the whole week that I know, which isn't a lot, it's like five different jets plus helicopters
Is he gonna
plus
dox the entire military base inventory?
Yeah, what's the armor
no,
specifications on those
no,
Is
helicopters?
there
no,
like
no,
any
no. It's
back
nothing.
entrances to like the bases, anything like that? Just
No, no,
kidding.
no. I'm not gonna tell you anything top secret or anything that's like, ooh, what do we got going on here? No, I'm not gonna say
Okay.
anything.
Hey there, welcome back to the As I Understand It podcast, the discussion podcast about careers, young adulthood, and the evolving world we live in. I'm your host, Cameron Geddes.
And I'm your co-host, Graham Nesbitt.
And today we bring you two new guests to the podcast. The first is a longtime friend, Matthew Barabasz, if you just want to say hi, Matthew.
Good morning, everybody.
And then the second is a coworker from my Circana days, Shubhrika Dogra, if you want to go ahead and say hi, Shubhrika.
Hello, hello.
So before we get started with our topics for today, we'll just say a little bit about ourselves. I'll go first, just to remind everyone. My name is Cameron Geddes. I am 25 and live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I graduated from Hope College in May of 2021 with degrees in economics and global studies. I work as a retail sales analyst for the Kraft Heinz company. I currently live, as I said, in Milwaukee. Some of my hobbies are like weightlifting and playing video games, particularly with Matthew and Graham. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Graham, you want to remind the audience about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Graham Nesbitt. I am 26 years old, graduated from Wheaton College with a bachelor's in psychology in 2021. Currently work as a counselor in the Rockford region. And in my free time, I like to be bad at chess.
Thanks, Graham. Let's see here. Let's see first. Matthew, would you want to go first and introduce yourself for the audience?
Sure. So my name is Matthew Barabasz. I'm currently 6 years into the United States Air Force, currently stationed at Nellis Air Force Base, Las Vegas, Nevada. Before that, I went to school with Cameron and Graham at Rafford Christian High School, and I'm currently working on a double associates in aerospace studies and with space studies.
Nice. Very cool. Well, how about you, Shubhrika?
Hi everyone. I'm Shubhrika. I am originally from India. I'm 26 and currently live in Chicago. Graduated with a master's in marketing analytics in 2022 from upstate New York, prior to which all of my experience, education, everything was from Delhi. And it's been fun so far. Here for the ride.
Nice. Well, thank you very much. All right, I think we're all ready for our questions then, and we'll have to, some of these questions will flex a little bit based on our personal experience, but I think it'll be just fine. So that first question is, what is it like getting a work visa in the US? I have some stats here from the American Immigration Council. They're a nonprofit and advocacy group for US immigration. They say that since the category was created in 1990, Congress has limited the number of H-1Bs made available each year. The current annual statutory cap is 65,000 visas, with another 20,000 additional for foreign professionals who graduate with a master's degree or doctorate from a U.S. institution of higher learning. They also state that the immigrant work actually reduces unemployment for U.S.-born workers and increases creativity. They said a recent study found that between 2005 and 18, an increase in the share of workers within a particular occupation who were H-1B visa holders were associated with a decrease with an unemployment rate in that occupation. A study conducted in 2019 revealed that higher rates of successful H-1B applications were positively correlated with an increased number of patents filed and patent citations. So I think that gives a little background into kind of the number and extent of immigration into the U.S. for work and some of the benefits that come along with it. So Shubhrika, I imagine you'd like to go first on this topic, coming from, India yourself.
Yeah, sure. It's a loaded question, being in that process, and it's great, all of the stats and the studies that you just brought up. One thing I will say for maybe anyone who's not aware about this process, and you've clearly done your research, but H-1B is, I think, just the tip of the iceberg. There's just so many ways that people take. My personal journey, of course, starts with a visa called F1 since I got here for education. And I still am on that visa. I haven't transferred to an H-1B yet because of exactly what you just quoted. That cap number of 85,000, including the 20,000 extra slots for master's or doctorate degree holders, which starts as a lottery. And I'm sure my instant natural expression kind of gave it away, that it's not the best of ways to do it in, well, a lot of people's personal opinions. If we take the lottery for this year specifically, which typically is held in the month of March every year, there were a little over 400,000 people who registered for it. And when you look at the number of selections and the number of slots available, it's only about 20 to 25% of people who are able to get that done. One big major issue that used to exist with the H-1B lotteries too was a single person could actually do multiple registrations up until this year, which resulted in at least 400,000 plus fraudulent applications last year. I've seen cases where a single person has had like 40 registrations done and 36 of them get picked, which essentially also translates into the fact that 35 other individuals have lost their chance to one single person. Things like that. Of course, the USCIS continuously works on reforming. Seems like this year it actually worked. 35% less applications came in, which clearly means there were pretty much zero frauds. So that's working for the better. But of course, with so many F1s coming in every single year, this cap is, well, not working out for the best for registrants, at least. From an employer's perspective, from the country's perspective, absolutely. There's the aspect of is citizens also needing to get into those jobs and wanting to get into those jobs, which primarily keep getting taken over by immigrants for most of the time. There are industries which are heavily dominated by immigrants. But I think there still is a good balance. There's research is one field where I think there's still a lot of room, and they do allow for a lot of, well, cap exempt is what they call it, H-1Bs to be granted, which what cap exempt means is that they're not bound by that 85,000 of a number slot, and they don't actually have to do the lottery. They can get it at any time because you're doing something to advance the country with thoughts like that. But there's just so much more. I just brought up two, which is F1 and the H-1B. There's visas like the L1, the O1. O1's a very high level intellectual, if you will, visa. It's called the outstanding visa. It's given to like people at the highest levels in their fields with talent and accolades and whatnot. And then there's a whole journey to the green card. We talk about every single aspect of that. With just my limitation of research, I think we could just go on for the entire day. But that's some background into what challenges can look like. That said, there's always ways to keep going. Like for me, currently, I'm on something called the F1 STEM OPT, which starts with about 12 years of, 12 months of OPT right after, which is called optional practical training. It starts right after you graduate for about 12 months. And then if you're in a STEM designated program, which is either science, technology, engineering, or math, of course, the university has to have a stamp of approval for that, but then you can extend it for up to 24 months after those 12 months. So there's about a process, there's a journey, there's extra ways that people work on this too.
It seems like it's a pretty complicated process. I'm looking at one of the websites describing the visas, and it's like there's a visa for like almost every letter of the alphabet. So yeah, I don't envy you having to go through that process.
I don't think I would know everything about that many visas. I could absolutely talk about visas related to corporate world and education, maybe a little bit about research and founding a business, things like that. Even
Yeah.
with that, I think I could go on for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Shubhrika, for the process from like the very
Yeah.
start of it to getting here, how long did that take?
Great question. It took me about 10 months to get the whole thing done. So I remember I started in the middle of the pandemic, August 2020, with the preparation of the GRE and looking into universities, doing the research. Do I actually even want to do this? That was a big question. But yeah, I was working full time. I used to work with a startup at the time, which was crazy working hours. It was like 9 hours a day, 6 days a week. Just not a schedule I could maintain. But they were pretty flexible, actually. Once they learned what I was working towards, they actually cut it down to part-time and adjusted my hours, which was pretty helpful. But yeah, it started with the university research, the program research, what the best area for me would be to go into, the GRE prep, which eventually got waived for me because I had 3 years of work experience prior. So I didn't need to have a GRE score. But there's a test called IELTS, which is for non-English speaking countries. So you kind of also have to pass that, prove that you are at a good level, that you can understand, speak, write, read English perfectly. So all of that process kind of took about 6 to 7 months. Get all the tests done, do all your applications, and then in about January, the acceptances started coming in. So contrary to what a lot of people do, I only applied to 4 universities. I got into 3 of them. And my choice for the one that I actually went to, I wasn't even going to actually appear for the personal interview because I already had the 2 acceptances before that. And it's always been my mom who kind of just pushes for things like, what's the harm in trying? So there's nothing you can lose, right? And I gave that PI. I got into this university too, which is Simon Business School, University of Rochester. And this was actually the most expensive out of the 3, but it turned out to be the best possible. So I got to, the visa stuff in about July, and I've been here almost 3 years, July 19th.
Nice. Well, yeah, thanks for that recap. Definitely sounds lengthy and mind-boggling. I think we'll go to our next question before too long here, but I'll just say that like when I had worked briefly in China for like a part-time job when I was studying there, yeah, I had to apply, I think like 6 months in advance, and then I actually had to call the US Chinese consulate to get them to issue my visa because I had previously gone there for like a visit through school and I didn't have the number anymore, so I had to figure out, they had to like waive whatever my visa number had been. So yeah, and I remember there was some people who were working in China as teachers, and for them to get official status in China, it was kind of a similar number of hurdles to jump over. One of which was that they had to be a permanent resident, they had to demonstrate that they had made a community impact, which I thought was kind of an interesting quirk of that process. So someone said he had like founded a local school nonprofit or something as a way to like fulfill that. So yeah, definitely a lot of difficulties in meeting all those requirements.
Yeah, that's very similar to the O1 visa that I was talking about. That outstanding one has a community impact aspect to it.
Yeah, definitely very fascinating to learn about, but definitely don't envy you going through that. Well, just for the sake of time, let's move to our next question. And this one is going to be, particular for Matthew, I guess, but that one will be about, let's see if I can find it here. What is traveling for military life like? Yes, thank you, Graham. So quick stat here on that. 84% of active duty family respondents had moved within the past 2 years. 37% of active duty moves took place in the last year, with another 31% in the last 1 to 2 years, the remaining, 32% being longer than that. They note that moving for the military has pros and cons, one of which Matthew had actually just explained to us about having to have his stuff arrive a little later than he did. But they noted things like damaging items during a move or reimbursement costs that don't rise to the level of what it takes to move. So if you want to go over kind of what it was like you moving around in the military, and you can just, if you want, you can just keep it to like your, I guess, personal observations on it. You don't have to you don't have to walk us through all the
No, I
I'm sure
understand.
there's a
Gotcha.
mountain of government stuff associated with that too.
There is. It's just a matter of, I guess, depending on how you want to do your move. So with the military life in general, with how you going back on what you were saying about the moving, there's a few different ways that you're about to like you can move any way you want to. So you can move it yourself. Military can move it for you. That's what I'm doing right now. Just because since I came from Korea, it's kind of hard to go to Korea, then go to my last base prior, which was North Carolina, and then take all that stuff all the way out to the other side of the country again. So it's just a lot easier to have the government do it at their expense, just because it is, I would say, more cost effective, but also at the same time, it saves a lot of sanity. Yes, there is a chance that since you're not moving it yourself, stuff can break, but you would rather, personally, I took the risk of, you would rather have that risk than try to move it yourself. And then after all the, because I spent 32 hours coming from South Korea all the way to North Carolina. And then like 2 or 3 days later, I had to come to Las Vegas. So that's another 7 hours. So it's just a lot easier to do it that way than if you were to try to move it yourself, which, yes, there is compensation with it. It just depends on how you want to do it and what time you're willing to have for it. But in general, though, military traveling is constant. In between February to roughly September is permanent change of station time of the year. So that's when everyone comes, everyone goes. It is definitely, I would say, hectic when you have to move, just because the fact of, it doesn't matter where you are, how comfortable you are. If you are stuck in one spot for, let's just say, 4 or 5 years, and you move, it's really hard to get past, just because you're basically picking up your whole life and moving it wherever you have to go. So like for me, I was at North Carolina for 4 years. I had to pick up everything. I had to unfortunately leave my wife in the States while I had to go serve my time in Korea, but we both grew from it. It's a different day story. But it's definitely hard, especially if you've never done one before. So it's just a matter of, with that military life, just trying to adjust to it. And it's not bad after the first time, but since this is technically the first permanent change of station that I've had that counts, where I actually have to move everything, it's kind of stressful right now. But
Yeah,
it's pretty fun though.
Yeah. Okay, well, in that case, I mean, thanks for giving us all the context and stuff for it. I'd like to bring together our, previous 2 questions really with the last one, which is, what's it like working as a foreigner? So I have some perspective here from goabroad.com, their site for finding foreign work and study programs. They list some pros of working abroad as things like broadening your mind, challenging yourself, learning valuable skills, appreciating your home country more, and boosting your resume. However, they list some cons of high startup costs, homesickness, illness due to differences in environments, which I hadn't even thought about, but is totally true. The fear of missing out for, the lives of your home country, friends, and family, and feeling like you don't belong. So I want to leave some extra time for this question, because I think it's, Matthew, Shubhrika, and I have that experience. And sure, I'm sure, Graham, you have some valuable insight as to working with people who have are working as foreigners and so on. But I'll go first from this one, and I'll kind of keep it brief because I'm interested to see what Matthew and Shubhrika, what your perspectives are. But I know for my limited experience working as a foreigner, when I was again working in China for part of a study abroad, it was definitely a big change in working environments and so on. And I've touched upon this a little bit when in a previous episode, but kind of the rules of engagement were different around getting deadlines met. There was a lot less, I've kind of noticed corporate speak. There was a lot less of that in China. Sometimes if you work in the US, especially in a larger company, Shubhrika and I have this experience working at, in a large company. In various ones, you might come across like corporate speak, or you kind of come across a different kind of language that covers your just kind of how people talk to each other, trying to create a uniform way in which you can relay things like deadlines and setbacks. People joke a lot in comedy about like, oh, I'll loop back to you on this. Or like, let's touch base. There is definitely a language to it, and
Yeah,
it can
let's circle back to it.
Yes,
on Monday.
exactly. Thank you. So there's a lot of that, and I think it does help create kind of a unified system so that people from all these different backgrounds can kind of learn it. It's almost like Esperanto, where it's like there is no native language, so everyone else has to learn it, and it comes together in such a way that you can get to it no matter what. But that doesn't seem to exist very much in China. It's a little different. So it's very straight to the point. Definitely very high power differentials there compared to the US, but also a lot of fun. I mean, there were some like work sponsored events where everyone would like go and get a drink together and stuff like that, and it would still be part of like working hours. So that was really cool. But a lot of also crossing those cultural barriers. So Shubhrika, I don't know if you want to recap. You've kind of given us the insight into how to become a foreign worker in the US, but maybe what your experience has been like.
Yeah. So again, there's a lot of aspects to it. I like the fact that you brought up the stat about appreciating your home country more. I actually had a long conversation with a friend of mine about this yesterday. But on the work front, on the career front, I think it's been very rewarding for me personally. It can be very different for different people. I think personally for me, my career actually took off in the US way more than I ever could have imagined it being like this in India. With the flexibility, and I just talked about the kind of hours I was working before I took the plunge into my master's too. I think the flexibility, the openness, the trust, and appreciative lack of micromanagement. A lot of things like that, I think, are really what I was looking for, that work-life balance. And even though I don't mind like doing a lot of the extra work that I put myself into at the company too, there's a big cultural difference for sure. Taking leaves and being flexible with your work hours, whatnot. There's drastic difference comparing both these countries. And for me, this has definitely been working out for the better. When you start talking about the personal aspect, there can be multiple pros and cons, and you add that struggle of the visas on top of it. You find yourself questioning like 30 times a day, is it even worth it? Should I keep going? Do I just go back? The country's starting to grow, my home country's starting to grow, blah, blah, blah. So there's always that tug of war in your mind that, do I spend more time with my aging parents and make sure that I'm close to my younger brother too, and build my life the way it was supposed to be, the way I've imagined it all my life back home, or do I keep doing this and gaining more experience, gaining more money, ease of life, et cetera, than I can back home? So there's that pull each way. And you absolutely do start appreciating your country a bit more. But I think unless you go back, all of those negativities that you were trying to get away from, they kind of escape your mind. On the bright side, all the positive things that you weren't noticing when you were right there physically, those start resurfacing. You start appreciating them a bit more too. But absolutely, that sense of belongingness, that sense of home is sort of absolutely lost. When I'm here, I feel like home is where my parents are, where my family is. When I'm there, I'm out of my routine. I'm not actually in physical home that I'm used to now. So there's like the concept of home is just an illusion at this point.
Gotcha. Yeah, I get what you mean. Matthew, you want to follow up on that?
Yes. So with military life in abroad, so it's kind of different in the military itself, just because the fact of the military is mostly self-sustained. So we have, you know, the base is gated off to just the military personnel and whoever is allowed on base. So we have a few people, so we had a few people come in from Korea and then actually help us out, but we never had like that, hey, you're going to a foreign country and you're going to work with all the people out there, and then it ends up like you guys had is like it's a different story than what I would have. So for us, it was all the military members and everybody who could speak pretty decent English. And then after that, it's just you're on your base, and then you have your off time off of work just to go travel and enjoy the non-military life outside of the base. So really, I never had that like interaction with just a random or a coworker or whoever I'd be working with abroad in like a different like language. So there wasn't really any language barriers. There wasn't any like cultural problems, because like as soon as you step foot in that country, they tell us immediately like, hey, like do this, don't do this, say this, don't say this. So they're very prepared with it, which is great.
Yeah, I'm sure when they're working on I'm sure that's one of the unique parts about like working on fighter jets and planes and all that is it's very helpful for everyone to have a very strong concept of the same language. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I imagine.
And
But
it helps because like so we do work with we work with Japan a lot. We work with South Korea. I think we might have worked with Thailand once. Don't quote me on that. But you see in the news a lot where it's like all those joint exercises, where they're like basically it's like a prep for war type scenario.
yeah, like war
So
games.
yeah, basically. So we did a lot of those out there. So we did have to work with like other countries other than just, you know, South Korea and America only. So that was definitely a transition because I mean, I've never went anywhere outside of America other than like, you know, Punta Gorda, which is in I think Costa Rica. I'm not 100% sure on that.
I won't fact check you, don't worry.
Thank you. Thank you. But we did a lot of stuff with them in those countries, and it's like just a completely different world. Like they'll teach you your culture or their culture, you'll teach them theirs, and then it's just it's very buddy buddy with different cultures because we're all under the same purpose of, hey, like we need to get this done if this actually were to happen. So there's just a really there's a connected mission that I guess not a lot of people are really realizing because they just see, oh yeah, headlines of like North Korea shooting off missiles or some country doing something crazy, you know what I mean? So there's just a lot of preparation and a lot of commitment to like each country that kind of makes it really fun actually.
That's cool. Yeah, I like what you said about connected mission. I feel like that's very important when you have a very broad background of people working together. So, Graham, any thoughts? I know we've kind of saved your contributions for the tail end of the podcast, but feel free to comment on whatever. I think we've probably got another 4 minutes or something before we close out.
Yeah, so appreciate the perspectives from everyone here today. I've been out of the country a couple times on like vacations and stuff, but I haven't had like an extended stay in or a study abroad program. My experience would probably be with I have had a lot of friends from other countries and have kind of gotten to know them and their experiences here in America. both in high school and college. College, there would be a lot of like MKs, people who grew up living in different countries and kind of got to hear their
Could you
stories.
expand
of
on MKs for the listeners?
Yeah, MKs are missionary kids. They are children, the parents are missionaries. They've spent a lot of time growing up in different countries, whether that's like Turkey or other areas, Russia, and have come back to the States to study. They were born in America, might have lived here for a couple years, but spent the majority of their life in another country. So I've gotten to hear their stories, hearing kind of the culture shock, things that were different, even basic concepts like different perspectives of time. Like if you are arriving at a certain date, some cultures, it's entirely appropriate to arrive like 10, 15 minutes after. So just simple things like that has been really interesting to get to know and hear from those perspectives.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, I think this is a valuable insight, and definitely there's a lot that you learn about the world just by knowing people from a different part of it. So yeah, I think great content there, Graham. And I should say Graham went to Wheaton College, so definitely a lot of prevalence of MKs and stuff, I would imagine, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
One quick thing. Some of them were actually MKs from Russia and Ukraine. So getting to hear kind of with the conflict that's going over there, how that's been affecting them has been quite interesting.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of when I was at Hope, we had a study. I've mentioned this previously on the show, but like I was part of a Phelps Scholar group that had a lot of international students, some of who I'm sure worked through that maze of visa conditions that Shubhrika highlighted for us. But yeah, all over the world. And it was interesting when there's different news topics coming up that, might have directly affected them. Kind of teaches you to navigate all that very tactfully. So, but yeah, I think that covers off all our questions for today. So, with that, I'll thank my wonderful co-host Graham, as well as our two amazing guests, Shubhrika and Matthew. Thanks for making time to come and hang out with us and share your unique life experiences. So always a pleasure to have new people on. That'll do it for today. You can find our show on Apple Podcasts as well as YouTube. So this episode will be out in about 2 weeks, and then we'll have some more guests shortly after. So this has actually been the close of the 10th episode, so we're 10 episodes in.
Ooh.
Little milestone.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. All right, well, hope to see the two of you back on in the future. I think that's about it. All right. Thanks,
Absolutely.
everyone.
This was fun.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
You're very welcome.
Thanks.
All right, cool. Thanks, guys.
All right.
See you.